Hello and welcome to the episode. Today I'm going to show you how to perform the first 600 mile service on a 2021 Honda CB125F. This video will cover what oil I use, what tools to use, resetting the service light, chain adjustment and relevant service checks. The oil I'm using is Castrol Power 1 1030. I use this because of the climate in the UK. If you live in a hotter country, I recommend using 1040. The API quality for this oil is SL, which exceeds the SG recommendation by Honda. The MA classification and code is JASO T 903, which are also recommended by Honda. First thing you want to do is run your engine for 5 minutes and get the oil nice and warm. This will make the oil thinner and easier to drain. After 5 minutes, switch the engine off. Make sure the bike is on the main stand. Use a suitable drain bowl and place underneath the engine. Unscrew the oil filler cap as shown. Here is the sump drain bolt. Use a 12mm socket and loosen the bolt counterclockwise. Unscrew the bolt with your fingers. Be careful, the oil will come out fast and it will be hot, so I recommend using gloves. While that is draining, move around to the opposite side of the engine and use a 8mm socket to remove the oil filter cover as shown. Carefully remove the cover, making sure the spring doesn't fall. Remove the spring and then pull out the filter. Do not use a screwdriver to remove the filter. Give it a wiggle with your fingers and it will eventually come out. Note the orientation of the filter. The rubber seal faces the engine. Replace the O-ring if you have one. If not, put some multi-purpose grease around the rubber seal. Push the filter in evenly and firmly, then install the spring. Put the cover on and screw the bolts with small increments, working up and down so the cover pulls in evenly. Now tighten to 10 Nm. If you don't have a torque wrench, just nip these up. Don't put too much pressure on the ratchet. Wipe the excess oil off the engine. Use a new sump washer. The sump washer is 20mm. If you don't have one and this is your first service, the washer will go again if you flip it around. Carefully screw the bolt in with your fingers. Use a 14mm socket and tighten this bolt to 30 Nm. This model took 800ml of oil. Use a jug for accurate readings. Fill the engine with 600ml. Clean the dipstick and place it into the filler hole. Do not screw it in. Pull the dipstick out and check the measurement as shown. Put another 100ml in and re-dip. Screw the cap in all the way and clean the excess. Now start the engine and check the engine for any leaks. Leave for 1 minute. Now turn it off and leave for a further 2 minutes. Unscrew the cap, wipe the dipstick and re-dip. If required, put the last 100ml and re-dip, making sure the oil line touches the top marker as shown. It's important the bike is on a flat surface and on the main stand. Here I tip the old oil in the used container. As you can see, I drained 800mm, the same amount that I put in. It's a good idea to check what you have drained and compare it to what you've put in. Some engines burn oil, so don't be alarmed if it's less. Make sure you dispose of your used oil at your local waste centre. While you are here, check all the lights as shown. Do not forget to check your horn. Now bounce the front suspension, check for good rebound. Lift the front and spin the wheel, check for vibrations in your hand. Any vibration could suggest a worn bearing. Wiggle from side to side and check the tyre condition. Now check the brake pad thickness, it should be no less than 1mm. Check all your brake hoses. Check rear brake operation and adjust the rod if the pedal movement is excessive. Do the same for the rear wheel. Pull up on the wheel to check the shock, links and bushes. Spin the wheel, check your chain isn't jumping around. Now check the chain tension. Follow the swing arm sticker as shown. Here we have 30cm of movement, so we need to adjust the chain. Unscrew the wheel spindle with a 19mm spanner. Use a 14mm socket to stop the spindle from spinning on the other side. Use a 10mm and a 12mm spanner to loosen the chain adjuster. Make sure the 12mm nut does not turn. Use the 12mm spanner and turn clockwise 1/4 of a turn on both sides. Now recheck tension. Place a rag in the sprocket and turn the wheel so it bites the rag. Now tighten the wheel spindle to 54 Nm. Remove the rag and recheck tension. Now tighten the adjuster bolts as shown, making sure the 12mm nut does not move. Check the markings match on both sides. When the bolt reaches the red mark, then the chain will need replacing. Chain adjustment should be made every 600 miles. Make sure you use a good quality chain when replacing. Now it's time to clean the chain. Use some cardboard to capture the mess. I use WD-40 to clean the chain. Use a chain brush as shown. Now wipe the excess. And don't forget the sprocket. Here I use Honda chain lube. Spray on the chain as shown, covering all areas. Make sure there is nothing on the rear tyre. Next I'm going to check the tyre pressures. The correct pressure is 32 psi. Now do the same for the rear. This also recommends 32 psi. Check bolts and fastenings are tight, going around the whole bike checking everything you can see. Check your side stand switch is operating correctly. Use spray grease in all the areas as shown. This also helps prevent corrosion. Turn the bars from lock to lock, make sure they are not rough and not catching on any panel work. Here are the tools that are used: 14mm socket, 12mm socket, 19mm spanner, 12mm spanner, 10mm spanner, chain lube, spray grease, WD-40 and 800ml of Castrol Power 1. Here is how to reset the inspection lights. With the ignition off, press and hold the set button and at the same time turn the ignition key on. The inspection spanner will now go out. That's the end of the video. Hope this has been useful. Why pay main dealer prices when you can do it yourself? And you know you've done it properly and you've learnt something along the way. Please subscribe for more. Until then, I've been Nick and I'll catch you on the next episode.